Hi, Gil from Testing Gil here. Today we're going to talk about another aspect of test design. This series is about different aspects of test design. Remember that when we talk about aspects, we're talking about them separately, but each one has their own cost and value, and we need to think about them together and then decide which are better for us. Tests are there to give us feedback, but we put a lot of baggage on this feedback. We want to trust this feedback. If the test passes, we want to believe that the behavior that the test checks works, and not just now. We want to believe it will continue to work all the way to production. On the other hand, if the test fails, we want to believe that something that worked yesterday stopped working today, and there is some kind of change that we did that caused this to happen. In fact, we really hope that this is something that we did. Some change in the code or the environment or the configuration, because then we can do something about it and fix it. But what happens if something else causes the failure? What happens if our tests start failing and passing for no apparent reason? Fragile tests. I've done a whole video about fragile tests. You can watch it here. We don't like fragile tests. We like predictability. Predictability means failing for the right reason over time. It means that a test fails not because we either ran or did not run tests before that one. It means that we can debug it, and the bug that we will find is the one we're looking for. It means that after we fix the bug and we run the test and it passes, we won't see that bug ever again. Let's say you have a nightly run of tests, and then you come in the morning and you see a bunch of them failed. If the first thing that you do is rerun those tests just to be sure, then you don't trust your tests. You just ran out of predictability. As I said, we like predictability, but it doesn't just form out of thin air. If we want our tests to be predictable, we need to design them for predictability. Let's go back to our bigger, better bookstore. We want to learn about buying a book. Here's a design for a test using APIs. First, we get a user, then we select a book, then we buy it, and finally we check the order status. This time we're not talking about the efficacy of the design, meaning we don't worry about the does it work aspect. Let's assume that it does. We're looking at fragility and stability. There are a couple of dependencies in this workflow that if they won't be there in the right place at the right time, the test will fail and not for the right reason. The first is not really in the workflow. It's about the environment. It also depends on the architecture of the application. If one server cannot find another server, cannot communicate with it, the test will fail. Maybe the other server is not set up correctly or is overloaded, and that will result in not answering or responding to the first server in an orderly manner. This will result in our test failing. Like the rest of the things that we discuss here, we can design parts of the tests to give us a more predictable answer. We may not be able to control the architecture of the product, although we might be able to influence it a bit, but we can control deployment. We can control configuration. These things have an impact on the stability and our predictability of the test. Next, let's talk about the different steps that we have and look what can happen with each step if things are not in place. If any of these dependencies are not in place when the test runs, it may fail, and again, not for the right reason. Let's take a look at the first two steps. Before that, imagine that you're running the same scenario but through a screen, not through the APIs. If you did that, first you'd probably need a viable user to use. So you select a user, and then you'll go browsing for a viable book, and then select that one. If you run this manually and your favorite user and books are not there, you'll choose other ones. But these choices don't work in an automated test. We need to make sure that the right user is there so we can call the get API with the right ID. The same is with the book. We need the book and the user to be there and to be retrievable at the time we run the test. Okay, next API, the buying part. I'm simplifying this, but buying means moving money around. Sure, funny money, and we can simulate transferring money in different ways, but we need somehow to make money available for this scenario to pass. We may also need other systems to be ready to accept the fake or real money that we're going to transfer and acknowledge. Finally, we need to... But wait, Buying isn't instantaneous. We can check the order status, but maybe our transaction was not completed yet. Maybe it's not updated in the database yet. That means if we're checking the result too early, again, our test will fail. And this time because we checked too quickly. All the things that we discussed contribute to the test fragility. If we want more predictability, we need to design our test to be a lot more robust. It will look like this. First step would be to make sure that all the system and dependencies are there running and ready to return all the answers that we seek. Then we set up the users and the books and the money, all ready to make the purchase. Then we get a user, which will succeed. Then we get a book, which will succeed. Then we finally buy the book. Then we wait. Then we check the order status, which will now succeed. And finally, we need to clean up everything before the next test starts running. Okay, success is not guaranteed, but we've designed enough steps in the process to prevent failures from reasons we don't care about. Predictability is something that we really want. If it's not there, we're going to suffer twice. First, we're going to pay in time and effort and debugging and trying to reproduce stuff that wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. But then we also pay in confidence. Because if some of our tests are not predictable, are not to be trusted, can we trust the others that will always pass? Nah. Predictability rules. But we have to design for it. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, like, subscribe, and watch other videos on this channel. And in the comments, tell me about how you spent night after night chasing elusive bugs just because somebody disconnected the server at the end of the room. Until next time, bye-bye.